Best Book Bits presents Kartikeya Ladha, author of the book Dream Beyond Shadows, and the man who walked over 1,000 kilometres across South India to write his second book, Life Unknown, A Passage Through India. Katike, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, for my audience who have never heard of you, tell me, whereabouts are you from?
So I'm born and raised in India. And I was born in central India, actually, in the heart of the country. And then in my late teens, I moved to the US, which is where I pursued in Boston, which is where I pursued my higher education. And later after that, I moved to New York to work in renewable energy industry, particularly solar. And afterwards, I went to South America, and all these things started to happen and unfold in my life, which is what I'm doing now, writing and sharing whatever I can with humanity to help raise our consciousness.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll get into that. So you've written 2 books. You're a travel writer, and you write about philosophy as well. But talk to me about your early years, your upbringing, customs, and school, etc. Where did it all start for you?
Yeah, so I was raised in a very typical Indian family, middle class and very traditional. And so I was raised in a very simple household where we didn't have the craziness of consumerism back then in India. It was a very simple India, which you don't see anymore, unfortunately. And so I was raised in a very simple household. And eventually, because my uncles used to live in the US, so my parents thought it would be nice for me to go to the US, study there, and eventually build a life there. So that's how I ended up moving to the US. But growing up in India was very simple. I actually went to a boarding school as well for some time. And it was a very Indian. I had a very Indian raising with mother and grandmother in a family setup with my grandparents, my sister, a lot of immediate family members living together. And it was very nice.
Yeah, perfect. And when did you start realising that you wanted to travel, do creative writing, and talk about philosophy?
So it kind of, there are a few ways I look at life now. There are things that we're told to do through where we are raised, through our cultures, through our conditionings, through our environments. And there are things that are beyond you that come from, you can call it a greater source or greater understanding, that kind of take you on a different route in life. And in many ways, it's not in your control. It's something that comes to you or something that you realize as you're going through life, right? So for me, I never was trained in writing or philosophies or any of these things, or nobody in my family was, or I don't come from that background at all. I come from a background of traders and business people. There are no artists in my immediate family or even close members or friend circle. So a lot of people get surprised to find out how I ended up in this field and creating an impact in this field. So for me, it all kind of started in US. And this is where the beginning of my first book took place as well, Dream Beyond Shadows, is when I was in New York. And one night, out of nowhere, I decided to leave everything, just kind of following this urge in me. And this kind of urge, in the logical sense, you cannot really explain to people, is it coming from your mind, or where is it coming from? It's this urge of just wanting to find answers to our quest, which can be beyond, finding a job or finding security or being in that survival mindset. And there's nothing wrong with that. I have nothing against that. But I thought for myself in that moment that there's more to life than just all of this. And in many ways, that led me to follow this path. And I think writing and philosophies just kind of happened as a byproduct of walking this path, where I just felt this urge to express myself. I just felt the urge to share with others the changes I was going through, the changes I was feeling. And I realized that we're missing something in our lives. We have all the comforts of the material world. We're getting all the things. We're building all these great things in the world. But then why is there the joy missing in life? Why are we missing magic in our day-to-day? So all these little tangents of life that I saw missing in myself and other people, and I thought that there's definitely something we're missing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, tell us about your time working in the solar industry in the US in 2017. I think you did door to door, and I think you're one of the top sales guys. So, touch on about that. An Indian kid going to America, selling solar and knocking door to doors. And I think some of the areas you were in were pretty rough. Is that correct?
They were. It was a pretty crazy decision on my part. Number one is because I graduated from a very top business school, and I had many job offers at that time, which were very corporate-ish and offices and all that. But I wanted to work in something that I really felt passionate about, and renewable energy made sense to me. And there was a startup company who invited me, and they were like, "Well, the way we work is we sell solar panels by going door to door." And I'd done sales work before, but not never door to door. And I thought if I can figure this door to door sales thing out, I think I'd be able to figure a lot of things out in life, because it's quite challenging to, knocking on a stranger's door and selling them solar panels by the end of it. Before I started it, I didn't even think that it was possible. So I just kind of ended up in that loop of door-to-door solar panel selling. And yeah, it was one of those jobs that really changed my perspective on communication and how you can really, if it's, you can really, if you come from a place of understanding and bring right information to people, it's not like you're manipulating them. You're trying to really share something that makes sense. And that's the approach I took. And yeah, it was quite a crazy adventure, because we would be going to very lower socioeconomic neighborhoods in Brooklyn and New York, where mugging happened on a usual basis, or even gunshots happen on a usual basis. So it was I would say it was quite an adventurous job, and it helped me let go of a lot of my fears of communication and understanding how you can really just come across to any human being, regardless of their color and all those things, and just come on a human scale and introduce something to them, and that's it.
Yeah, and what made you throw in the towel and say, you know what, I'm going to buy a plane ticket and go to Peru and write your first book? So what made you do that?
I think that came from this place of sitting in my apartment in New York and looking down the street. And, I'd come from a city in India, and not even a big city. And I ended up in New York doing thing I wanted to do. And I was actually loving it. It wasn't like I was in some corporate job, which I didn't like. I loved what I was doing. So yeah, I had kind of this vision where I could see my life going a certain way, the job and growing in it and family and all this. And I just couldn't accept it. I just couldn't. And I knew there was something more to life. And I think that was the spark for me. And I just ended up leaving.
I think what you're trying to say is you traveled the road not less traveled. So you took the unconventional route and took a risk and jumped on a plane and went to Peru and then fast forward and here we are. So your first book, Dream Beyond Shadows, it was based on your travels in Peru.
Yes.
What was that experience like? So tell me about that. And sorry for cutting you off.
No, it's okay. It was quite incredible, because that's really where it all began for me. I lived in the Amazons. I did ayahuasca, which I think is quite popular in Australia now. So I was living with indigenous people, and I did ayahuasca, not for fun, but something really to understand myself in a deeper scale. And it was very different because, when you're with indigenous people, you really understand the depths of some cultures, and you understand how we come from nature and that understanding of our connection with the natural world. So I started having that deep insights, and those deep insights also led me to want to come back to India and explore India in its deep spiritual heritage and its deep spiritual lineage, not in a material sense, but really trying to understand who are we as human beings, why are we here, all these big questions of life, and not on a philosophical scale, not even to tell other people, but more for myself. So that really was what Peru triggered for me. the Amazon jungles triggered for me. And yeah, I think writing, as I said previously, was just a byproduct of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, what was the experience like on ayahuasca? What did you get out of it? What visions? I myself have done some research on it. I've never had it myself, but I know a little bit about it. Tell me what your experience was like.
Well, it was life changing, that's for sure. You may have to read my book to get an understanding of it. It's very difficult to explain it in words, to be honest. But in simple words, all these years post ayahuasca and coming back to India, doing deep meditations and all these things to realize a higher consciousness of our understanding, they're basically to make us understand as human beings that there's more to us than we realize. There's more to the world than we realize. There's more to the whole scheme of things than we understand. So it's really about broadening our horizon and looking at things beyond one dimension, looking at things beyond one way of thinking. And I think it's very important for human beings. It's going to be essential, in my opinion, for this coming century, for these coming decades, that we start to think in a multidimensional way. We broaden our consciousness to understand and deepen in ourselves, to relate with our natural world, to understand our creative spirits, to understand why we are here, to understand our integration with the world and our natural surroundings and all these things. They sound very simple when you say it, but we need to really learn to live like this. It's a new way of living that we need to implement in our lives, where community is a part of it, where joy, where our integration with nature, where our implementation with our creation as in how do we create as human beings, how do we connect with that creative energy and really create, really bring something of meaning in this world for ourselves and for other people. So all these things which, back in the day seemed kind of woohoo, haha, I think now through all these years, and specifically because of the pandemic years, I think humans are realizing we need this. We need this as mainstream living. We need these ideas. We need these philosophies to be part of our lives so that we can build our lives around these foundations.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, absolutely. What's your best memories and places you went to in Peru, apart from the Amazon jungle?
Apart from Amazon jungles, well, Cusco and the whole Andes range mountains, they're amazing. They're really beautiful, very powerful place on the planet, in my opinion. Just energetically, you can really feel it when you're there. So that was amazing. And I miss Peru. I haven't left India almost it's over 4 years now. It's actually 4 years now that since I came back to India, and I haven't left India. But yeah, it's been an incredible time in this country because there's so much. I mean, the first book initiated in Peru, but I finished that book in India. I finished the India book in India. And then I finished writing another book recently. And so that's being edited, and I'm going to keep working on it this year to bring it out to the audiences. But yeah, India is where the heart belongs.
Yeah, absolutely. And to segue onto that, obviously, we'll talk about your third book in a second. But your second book, which you took a 1,100-kilometer walk, why did you do this, and where did you start, and where did it finish?
So I actually started from the bottommost part of India, which is a town called Kanyakumari. That's where India ends. It's like the tip of India. And then I walked up from the whole southwestern belt to all the way till Goa. I don't know if you know Goa, but it's quite a popular destination. So that's what I did, that long walk that is part of this book. But I also did a lot of walks in northern India, in the Himalayas for months. So I'm quite used to walking around India by now. And yeah, I mean, I think the best way for me at least, is to really, it was a pilgrimage more than anything. It was a journey in the unknown, and I didn't do any planning for that walk. I wasn't even sure how long I was going to walk. It could have been a situation where I could have stopped in a day, or I could have stopped in a few months, or I could have never stopped. So it was one of those situations. And again, it was this deep urge of wanting to deepen in the understanding and understand why we're here, all these things, get clarity on these things. So it was a very tremendous experience because I got to see a lot of states. I got to live in villages. I got to be hosted by people, and all kinds of people, because India is so diverse. You meet people from all walks of life, all walks of religion, all kinds of different faiths and beliefs, just from one town to one village. So in that regard, it was just the most mind-blowing experience you can have as human beings, in my opinion. And I'm so glad I did it. It was, of course, coming from a place of wanting to find out more. For anything, let's say, in simple words, if I want to explain it to your audience, let's say you're having a challenge to go through a problem in your life. You don't know the answer to it. You're trying to figure out what the answer is to it. It's not going to come to you when your mind is busy. It's not going to come to you when you're completely occupied with distractions. It's going to come to you. The real answers are going to come to you when your mind is quiet, when you are really connected with yourself and your internal selves, and you feel the answers coming to you in whispers. That's how it comes. It doesn't come from the noises, especially in the world today, because we live in a digital world where we're being manipulated so easily by our surroundings, by the media, on social media and external mainstream medias. To really connect with what we truly want, we need to really quieten everything and sit with ourselves to understand what we want. So that only happens if we are in that connection with the internal selves. And more people are realizing this, and more people want this. So in many ways, that's what my inspiration was as well. Like, how do we deeply understand who we are and who I am? Not even other people. For me, it was initially, who am I, more than anyone. And once you have a good understanding of who you are, regardless of what other people say, what other people think, what they tell you to be, then you get this sense of confidence, this sense of understanding that nobody can change you. And you have this power, which is real empowerment. It's not an empowerment based on what you're going to buy, based on money you have, or what you're going to show to other people. It's real empowerment based on the confidence you get from your understanding of who you are. And that's what I think people need in today's time more than ever, especially young people. They need to be able to sit with their own power, own understanding of the self, and be like, this is who I am, and I'm not compromising on this. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe, not because anybody told me, but this is who I am, and fuck everything else, in simple words.
Yeah, fantastic. I agree. I've heard you say once, facing the depths of your being on your unknown adventure. So was that one of the reasons for the long pilgrimage as well, facing your being in an unknown environment?
Yes,
well?
Definitely. I mean, the big inspiration for me has been fear. I think not just me, but the whole world struggles a lot with fear. Fear of death, fear of the unknown, fear of uncomfortable, fear of getting out of your surroundings, whatever. Fear of anything. And fear is something that works on such a subtle subconscious level that we don't even realize, but a lot of our actions, a lot of our intentions are being driven by fear. So for me, a big part of my journey, of my understanding of these depths, as you mentioned, was to overcome fear. And the best way to overcome fear is to really face it, to bring yourself in scenarios where you're faced by it constantly. And that's when you overcome, you give yourself the opportunity to overcome the fear, because you face your fears. And the more you face your fears and the more you overcome them, the more you are able to realize your limitless potential and your limitless power. And along with this fear comes a sense of darkness. So I think I'm one of those people, a lot of the people, writers, I guess, in this field and this kind of motivational things, they always tell people to chase the light or chase the good and chase the happiness. I say, yes, that's good, but you need to also face the darkness of your depths, face the fears that are holding you back, because that's really where the depth is coming from. The more you understand where you're fearful, where your darknesses are coming, the more you face them, the more you overcome them, the more stronger you become. That's where real strength comes from. So depth is all about facing your fears, going deep down in the subconscious, going deep down in your intuition, and seeing what's holding you back. What is that fear? What are you fearful of? And then trying to give your best into overcoming that fear.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Now, did you have it planned out when you left from town to town, or how did you plan?
No, no plans.
Did you have it?
I'm a pretty bad planner, to be honest.
Got it, perfect. And so what type of things did you carry with you? Did you have a suitcase or a bag or some clothes, or what?
I had a bag and a few clothes, and that's it. And I was eating on the way from small eateries or people's homes, and that's basically how I traveled.
And you had a little bit of money on you, hopefully, to get around.
I had a bit of money, but many a times I didn't have money, so people fed me food. I lived with strangers, and people even gave me water.
Wow.
And this is when I also realized that how the world functions on this understanding of cooperation and service, because when in those scenarios where you willingly let go of your attachments of money or your attachments of even survival, and you're in that survival state where you're hungry, or you don't even have water, or you don't have the means to buy something, like how is your reaction like? And you willingly give it away to see your experience in this world, right? And then you witness how some people come in your life, strangers, to offer you food, offer you money. And I think I saw beauty of humanity through that experience. And I realized that no matter what happens in this life, that whatever we see negative in the world about human beings, majority of human beings are good people, and they are there to help each other. They are there to support each other. That's our innate nature. We love, and many great leaders have said this: love comes naturally to us, service comes naturally to us. These things come more naturally to us than, let's say, hatred or division, which is something that is a form of conditioning, that is a form of our environment. But what's coming naturally to us is wanting to support each other, wanting to take care of people. And I experienced that through other people by putting myself in scenarios where I was in a state of needing help rather than giving it. Sometimes it's actually easier to give help than receiving it, because you have to let go of your ego many a times to receive help when you're in the state of need, desperation even. So that's something very beautiful experience in my walk.
Yeah, perfect. And India's a melting pot of gurus. Did you meet any teachers on the way and get any lessons from gurus at all?
India's a melting pot of
gurus,
but a lot of fake gurus and a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of
charlatans.
Yeah, a lot of that, which is part of the modern age. I think it works like that. But at the same time, you do come across very rarely very powerful beings in this country. And of course, I've met some really powerful yogis in my experience of traveling around India. It happens rarely, to be honest, but when it does happen, you are able to recognize them, and they are very powerful. And of course, they remind you of why you're doing these things, why you're going down this path, and why you are trying to understand, because they're doing really crazy, incredible things, And to my understanding, I think everyone has the potential in themselves to realize that they are their own gurus, they are their own mentors, they are their own teachers, that they have the ability to transcend, they have the ability to evolve, they have the power in themselves to let go of all their fears, all their darkness, to really transcend beyond their limitations. And it's in every one of us. And I think that's my inspiration. That keeps me going, because I see potential in human beings, and I know that what we can be and what we're being now. So that distinction really inspires me, because I know from my own experience, from my own evolution, that I've witnessed that so much we can become, but we don't choose to. But we just need to be triggered so that we can get there.
Yeah.
And And it's happening. People are doing these things, and people are open to this. For example, you're asking me about these questions because you are open to them. You are open to listening to another side of the coin. And I think we need to be more open. We need to listen to more ideas so that we can see how we can implement whatever we can on basis of our experimentation, right? I think this is what the key is. Instead of believing blindly or having blind faith, having an experimentation kind of method where, okay, you listen to something as an observer, you understand to something as an observer, you try to implement it in your life, see if it's working for you. If not, you let it go. If it's working, you work with it. So that's the kind of approach is important to have. And yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, but I'm a massive spiritual person myself. I've gone through many different religions and practices throughout the years, and it's all one at the end of the day, because we all live on planet Earth, and all religions are practiced on planet Earth. But one of my original mentors was a guy named Osho. Have you heard of Osho before?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm massive friend of mine. Used to live in Pune and actually at the commune back in the day, and got me on board. And yeah, amazing. Tell me your experience or thoughts on Osho.
I will. Before that, I was going to say Australia is such a powerful land as well. I've never been there, but the Aboriginal culture, I mean, I've read this book. I don't know if you read it. It's Mutant Messenger or something. It's a mutant messenger story of this American woman who ends up in Australia, a doctor, and then she ends up walking with an Aboriginal tribe across the desert of Australia. And the Aboriginal culture, I mean, there's so much beauty in these indigenous cultures, and we are realizing this with time, that there's so much we can learn from these indigenous cultures. How they used to live with the land, how they used to respect the land, how they were. It's so funny to me that nowadays, the way I see it is people ask us if we're spiritual or not. But naturally, the way we have a mind, we have a heart, we have a body, we have a spirit too. And you can call it whatever you want based on your understanding of it. But we're naturally spiritual beings. That's who we are as beings, right? It's just we're so disconnected from that nature nowadays. We're so disconnected from it that we have to ask each other, are you spiritual or not? We're naturally spiritual. That's how we were born. So if you go to any indigenous culture, you don't ask them, are you spiritual or not? That's how they live. That's part of their life, Same in Hinduism or Buddhism. They're such animalistic religions if you really look at them. It's not like in Hinduism, if you practice Hinduism, like not the text, just the religious aspects of it. Animals are like gods, and rivers and trees are like gods. You pray to the rivers, you pray to the trees. So it basically comes from this understanding that nature is God, right? And that makes us spiritual. That makes us connected to the land. And I think this is what we're missing in our world today.
Yeah, absolutely. And another guru who's a Westerner that turned into an Indian guru is Ramdas. So another inspiration of mine, Ramdas, Be Love Now, went to India in the late 60s, had a psychedelic experience, met his guru, and changed the course of sort of, went back to America and what do you know Ramdas, or have you heard or done any research on Ramdas?
I've read both Ramdas and Osho. I know really strong followers of both of them. I think both of them had really incredible things to say and incredible things to teach. And they were both very connected individuals. There's no doubt about it. And they brought a lot of insights into the human world. And, I think people like us, the way I look at life is it's a continuation, and whoever does whatever they do, we have to just continue building on it. So if somebody spread their teachings, so for example, I don't look at things, whatever I'm doing is I'm doing that. I'm just a channel. I'm just a source of creation. That's all we are. We are just a source of creation. Whatever we're doing, we're just channeling it and we're bringing it into the world. And it's a continuation of our consciousness. And that's what Osho did. That's what Ramdas did. That's what any teacher ever does. And that's what we're here to do. We're just here to consciously bring and channel through our creation for other human beings. to really realize and broaden in our consciousness to understand who we are. Self-realization, ultimately, if we realize the self, we realize who we are and why we are here, then everything becomes a byproduct of it. Everything.
Yeah. And what is you touched on it before with Buddhism. What does Buddhism mean to you?
So Buddhism is, there are many lineages of Buddhism now as well. I was influenced by different kinds of Buddhisms for a while, but since I came back to India, I was influenced a lot by Tibetan Buddhism, which is what thrives a lot in northern India, by Dalai Lama's heritage, or even other lamas. I cannot see the title. What is it?
Yeah, so I've got it here, the Tibetan Book of the Living and Dying, which is similar but not really. But when you said that, I thought I'd grab it from the bookshelf.
Yeah, so Tibetan Buddhism I definitely got influenced a lot by Tibetan Buddhism. I met some really powerful yogis as well in my time. And again, Buddhism, Hinduism, they're just such simple philosophies. Again, with Buddhism, it's all about coming back to yourself, realizing the self, practicing compassion and love, non-violence, these virtues of life that I think are so important. And it's, if you take out the labels, if you take out the labels of religions, if you take out the structures of religions, and you try to learn from all of them, even Islam or even any religion for that matter, if you just try to learn the core crux of their philosophies, it really comes down to compassion, love, and peace. I mean, that's really basically what it is. Be more compassionate.
I agree too. I'm actually practicing Buddhist and other religions as well, but went to the Buddhist festival recently and took my kids. I practice the Eightfold Noble Path, right understanding, right thoughts, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness, and right concentration. And it's all correct.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, I think the best religion is the heart. We already know what's right and wrong in us. And I think the more we instead of putting our, let's say, our prowess on statues or symbols or religions outside, we ask ourselves, like, is this the right thing to do or not? We always know the answer in ourselves. Yeah. And the more we connect here, I mean, this is the biggest religion, no? The more we connect here, we know what's right or wrong. We know what we need to do or not. So I think the biggest religion, after studying all of them, practicing plenty of them, it's just here. This is the main religion, and coming back here. And it's basic, when you try to look, I'm a reader, you're a reader, we've read a lot of things, and we try to understand and debate and question a lot of these things on an intellectual level. But the real thing is beyond the intellect. The real thing is in here, in the heart, coming from a place of love, coming from a place of understanding. So really developing on that is what I believe is where the human emancipation is from our suffering and pain. Because the more we come from the heart, the more we come from a place of a deep intuitive self, the more we let go of the ego, the more we let go of this belonging of or holding of this is mine, this is yours, the more we really practice oneness and we realize, look, we're all kind of on the same team, let's not make this us versus them kind of thing. We're all trying to work on the same things to better ourselves, our families, and we want a better life. And this is what we need, man. This is really what we need in the world today.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. What are the Himalayas like?
Oh, magical. They're so powerful. They're so powerful. Every time I go there, every time I leave actually from the Himalayas, and I feel like, oh, I'm good, I don't need to go back there. But every time I go back to the Himalayas, and I'm reminded of how powerful they are. And I've definitely come to an understanding that there are specific places in the world which act as energy points, energy centers, and Himalayas are one. I think Australia may be one as well. I've never been, but that's what I've heard. But certain parts of the world are just very conducive for spiritual growth. Himalayas are definitely one place. And there's a reason why so many saints and sages have been going there and living there for thousands of years, because they're just, you go meditate there, it's a different experience. You just kind of accelerate in your spiritual expansion right away. So yeah, they're just magical, man. I'm going again very soon.
Yeah, awesome. And the Ganges River, what makes it so magical and magnetic?
Well, there's a lot of mythological stories around it, which can go on forever. But basically, the river comes from I don't know if you know the Hindu god Shiva. So he's quite a famous god, and all these symbolic representations, they come from mythology to help us connect with religions and their natural essence. But basically, the river comes from the source. That's what they believe, and that's why it's so powerful. And yeah, so the source, it's coming from the source. So it's revered as the mother Ganges, and they believe that if you take a dip in the Ganges, you go down dip, you're basically releasing yourself of all your sins, all your evils with your sins. So there's no doubt about Mother Ganga being a powerful, powerful stream and river, but ultimately it comes down to us, how we're really practicing in our lives and taking away from Ganga,
Yeah. And your third book, talk to me about your third book. What's it about and when will it be released?
So third book is a big creative challenge for me. I'm jumping guns from nonfiction to fiction. And I've finished writing the first draft, and my editor is looking at it right now. And so that's why I'm going back to Himalayas to work on it more. But it's basically, I've created a fictional story of a guy who was the plot is not very unique at the beginning, but there are a lot of mystical twists in the story, which I've put in the book. So it has romance, it has mystery, it has philosophy, all integrated to kind of engage the readers and surprise them. So the story is based on the main character who's based in New York. He's half Indian, half American. So he's doing the typical life, and then he's married, and then he goes through a divorce and all these things, and then he ends up going on this mystical ride and meeting all these people, and ends up going on an adventure. So it has all those elements. There are many characters in the story. There's a love story there. There's a lot. There's both. There's dark and light, and I'm trying to showcase things which kind of people can relate to. People who are not even spiritual, they can relate to. But then I'm using the story to trigger people to ask deeper questions, to ask what do they really want in life, all these things. So yeah, it's something new I'm working on. Let's see.
Yeah, perfect. And what advice do you have for sort of wannabe writers and creative travel writers? So any advice for writers?
Just start writing.
Yeah.
I think just start writing. Don't overthink too much about what's going to become of it, or who's going to read it, or if you'll get published, all those things. Just write it. If it's a story coming from a feeling, from your heart, really just try and express it. I think what I've learned through my experiences, it's really the feeling and the intentions behind the story that people connect with. Anybody can write really well. There are many good writers out there. You can get the style right. You can do all the studying right and make it as good as possible. But at the end of the day, it's that feeling, like how does that make you feel? And you cannot fake those feelings. This is what I've really learned. You cannot fake feelings through your expression in any art form. It has to be authentic. And the more authentic you are in your any expression of your art or whatever you're saying, people connect with it. People connect that it's not coming from a rehearsed space, or it's not coming from a place of cut, copy, paste. It's coming from an authentic space, and that's the key. And don't think too much about the results. Just stay true to the process, and whatever will happen will happen.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote my book. It took me 13 years, 500 book summaries to make the book, and yeah, you got to be yourself, and the book will come out when it's ready to come out as well. Don't force the process. Just trust the process as well. Yes. But I want to thank you for being on the show. Just a couple of last questions before we wrap up. If you had a dinner party, 3 people from the past, who would they be?
Ooh, Yeah, so these are the people I'm no longer in touch with, right?
It could be anyone, famous, past, anyone at all. 3 people.
Oh, past as in not my past, but anybody.
Anybody. Some famous people, dead or alive, from history.
Ooh. Okay, so definitely Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
Okay, I know. Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, and Einstein.
That's an amazing dinner party. And what would you serve them?
Nothing.
Just conversation.
Yeah, we would just drink
Wow.
water. Because, I mean, Einstein and Gandhi didn't eat much anyways. And Nelson Mandela by the end stopped eating. So, yeah, we'll just fast, drink water, and just talk or even sit in silence. I don't care.
That's an amazing answer. An amazing answer. Where can people find you online, and where can they find your books?
So in Australia, I think in Australia, they're all available on Kindle. The paperback version of the latest book in Australia is too expensive, so I wouldn't recommend buying that. I've had problems selling paperback version in Australia all the time, so they're definitely available on Kindle in Australia.
I've got a big audience in India and America, so where can they find the book?
In India, they're available everywhere. In India, you can buy in bookstores, you can buy in Amazon, on Flipkart. So India, everything is available. Australia, they're only available in Kindle version. Paperback is too expensive, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay.
And you can mostly find me on my Instagram, which is where I'm active, or you can go on my website. So Instagram is Kartikeya Ladha and website is kartikeyalada.com, which is where you can also sign up for my newsletter.
Perfect. And what's the last message you want to leave the audience?
Just try and be joyous, try and follow what's really in you, try and connect more with yourself, realize the self, grow in your understanding of the self, try and create as much as possible. And remember to be patient because you have a lot of time. Don't rush through things. Take your time.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for being on the show, and thanks for being so honest and open. To my audience, follow this man, buy his books. He's going to be one of the greatest teachers in the future, especially in India and around the world. And we look forward to many great books coming your way. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Thank you
No
so much.
worries at all. And we'll speak soon.
Lots of love for you and your family, and take care.
Take care. Bye-bye now.